To order for today. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Barnes. Mrs. Burdick. Here. Mr. Curran.
Here.
Mr. Sear.
Here.
Mr. Demick. Mr. Fanton. Mrs. Hanchett. Here. Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Havey.
Here.
Mr. Healy.
Here.
Mr. Ricky.
Here.
Mrs. Ricketts Swales.
Here.
Mrs. Root. Mr. Rumfelt. Mr. Stockin. 10 present, 5 absent.
Thank you. So kind of a hodgepodge agenda today, but some informational stuff, some kind of housekeeping type stuff, and then at 11 o'clock, Peter Degman is going to be coming in to discuss his thoughts on the future of the Conflict Defender's Office. But let's just start at the top here, and we're going to work through some stuff. Some of it's going to come from me, some from Carissa, and we'll see if we can get this done in an hour so we're ready for Peter. ARPA updates. I was hoping we'd have Legislator Demick here for an update on the fairgrounds request. He's still out of town on DPW work. But he did send me an email today that he's looking forward to giving us a detailed update. But he did say that the fairgrounds has increased their ask from, I think it was initially 350,000 or so, and they're up to 540,000. So we'll have some. I think Fred has done some legwork as far as helping them prioritize what they want, and then it'll be up to us as a board to determine how far down that list we want to go. But we won't talk about that any further unless someone wants to make a comment today, until we get Fred back. There's been some conversation that stemmed from the Ward Town Supervisor's letter about utilizing some of the county ARPA funding to directly provide funds to towns and villages. Gretchen, I know that you've kind of been the champion for that as well. What we're going to have to do at some point is, A, decide if we want to provide funding through, to the towns and villages at all, and B, if we want to restrict its use. I know way back in the day when we first started talking about this, there was a concept of restricting it to only something that would enhance outdoor recreation in the county. But as we noted from Jim Lucy's letter, some of these towns and villages have needs beyond that. I think he mentioned something about the foundation of their town building or something like that. Keir Durham in planning had mentioned that if we were going to restrict its use at all, that we should have them try to adhere to the county comprehensive plan. So that's another way we could go about it. So we've got time today. Do you want to discuss best path forward, or what I think we have consensus that we're willing to provide some funding to the towns. Is that accurate?
I just wanted to add a little bit more about that. And, people reaching out to me about it too. We did talk about it being recreation, and other needs did come up. And not so much, I think our comp plan is important, ours a county, but most towns and villages have their own too. I think we'd probably be better off setting up some criteria, and I've never promised, of course, anybody any money, but it's not like there's going to be hundreds and thousands of dollars going towards it. It helps with some of the projects that they just need that little bit. But I really think it probably should kind of fall under the criteria of what HARPA money should be used for, which we'll include some of the things on our comp plan, probably pick up some of the things that they have on their own comprehensive plan too. And I think that way it gives a little bit of use and their own voice on things that they need without feeling like, but we do need a criteria.
I agree. You don't want to be too restrictive to the towns.
Right.
On the other hand, you don't want to turn over money and all of a sudden the town supervisor's bought himself a Crown Vic or something.
Yeah.
So how we achieve that, I'm not sure. Terry, have you run any of the numbers as far as, if we settled on a number of 25,000 per municipality, how much would that be? Or $50,000 or?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you have 39 municipalities, you have 29 towns and 10 villages. So you're talking 39 municipalities if you give them money. And when we first initially brought up the concept of giving municipalities money, we looked at, $50,000 is going to be just under $2 million. 25,000 would be $1 million. So, there are different ways to spend that, how much you really want to allocate. I guess you need to look at your balance and see how much do you want to share with the towns and villages. I attended a village board meeting last night in the village of Angelica. They also have some needs for their village hall, their village offices as well. So I think there are needs out there that they don't have means to meet them, such as the town ward. But I think there's a lot of options, and I do believe you should probably put some kind of restriction on it, only because if you don't put a restriction on it, the ARP reporting is a little more difficult. Or you got to figure out if you're going to have just a check written to them, or are you going to have them apply for it and review the needs of the municipality? I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be discussed about how you want to do it, but, figure out how much you want to give them and then see how much you can give to each one of them, I guess. But there are 39. So
Thank you.
there's 39 different municipalities that you need to think about.
Terry, the other thing too, and Brooke, maybe what's important too is what towns and villages have received ARPA money and are using it. I think that kind of falls under the,
Well, I think they all
They
did.
all received some
and
money.
are they using it? Have they used it? Is it sit? I think those are things that should be part of the criteria in applying for it. Or I'm not putting it together, but I think it should.
Well, I think you do
ultimately-
have to have some kind of a request form, what the use is for it. What did they do with their own? Is it gonna supplant that? I mean, is it gonna help, are they gonna combine it for a group effort? Is that what they're gonna do, or did they already spend it? I mean, I think you do need to do that.
Well, I don't think we should probably get into the business of picking winners and losers.
Right.
I think you set a flat amount for everybody, but then you make them submit a plan, a use plan or something like that. Ms. Burdick?
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I think everybody gets the same amount. I don't care what their project is, you can't start doing that. This is extra money that the county was lucky to get. The towns and villages all got their share of it also. And what they did with it really isn't our concern. That's what, they have to report it, they decide what they wanted to do with it. But I think that we set the amount and we do, I don't know, I know for the towns and villages, the reporting, you have to specify what you spent the money on. So if the county's giving the money to the towns, do they just list that as how they spent it, that they gave it to the municipalities? Or then they have to account for how each municipality spent that money in the reporting?
Our response from the auditors that we're working on is that it depends on how you allocate it to them. So there are different ways to do it. We've just got to figure out the best way to do it. And the reporting is different depending on how you allocate it to them.
So I think we need to be very careful and either do it as a gift from the county so that it's strictly reported as we gifted, because if you start getting into specifics of how each town and village spent the money, your report's gonna be crazy.
we already know-
I mean, we're doing them a favor, and now we're getting ourselves in a pickle trying to report it. So I think we need to be very careful.
That makes sense.
I think Allison's probably going to agree with you. Let's see.
Just as a reminder, we can't give gifts to the towns or villages, so please that we have to be careful how we craft the language and the way that we allocate funds to.
Thank you.
Could we call it a grant?
I do have that.
Yeah, sure. Call it whatever Allison wants us to call it.
Well, I think if you guys were to decide that that is something you want to do, probably the easiest thing would be to have Allison and Terry work with our consultants for ARPA, come back and tell you what the best way to do is, whether you have plans or whether you do a simple grant. They're
I think-
probably going to have some good advice on that.
Yeah, in general, the best plan would be the one that creates the least amount of work, oversight, time coming out of any of the offices at the back table there. Mr. Barnes?
Talking about sharing with the towns and villages, how does population differences play into that picture?
I don't think, if it was up to me, it wouldn't. You could justify that by saying Wellsville already got more ARPA money because of their population size. I'm sorry? Right, yeah. I don't want to go down that road personally. Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, I believe we got to keep it simple and equal, and don't make it any more complicated than we have to. But I'm not sure, have we circulated a list of everything we do now for the towns to the new board? I can't remember if we have done that since the new board was sworn in or not. And also, I've asked for a list of our pilots by community, and so we can see who's getting what and other benefits.
I think Terry has sent it to the full board recently, but maybe she just sent it to those that were inquiring about sales tax sharing out of District 4. But Terry, can you resend that
Yep,
to us?
yeah, I have that. I can send that out to everyone about the list of services that we provide for municipalities. So I can send that out.
And then the pilot again?
We are working on the new list right now. So once we have a new list, that'll be complete for 2023, and then we'll be ready to share that list by municipality.
And you think that'd be a full and complete list? There wouldn't be any pilots out there that we're not aware of? It's happened in the past, or?
Well, we hope to capture what we know, so there's always the chance that we might not know about one, but we do have a pretty good list right now of what's out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're not going to go down the sales tax road today because it's not on the agenda. So we'll stick to the agenda. Is there anybody, before we move on, I think Carissa has some, if there's no objections from anyone on this board before we give them the direction to investigate with Drescher and Malecki best path forward.
I think that's a great idea. The one thing that I think would be helpful for us too is to have that updated list of the projects that we are working on now, so we see kind of where we're at.
That is on Jan's, that's on Jan's budget agenda for this afternoon, I think.
Good.
And we had already reached out to Drescher and Malecki. I do have a response from them on, awarding different agencies and awards, I guess if that's what you want to call it, is some kind of award or allocation. We do have the language on that we'll work with Allison to get that down. It's not that difficult. It just depends on how you want to award that money to them.
Okay, and then we'll just work in our private time when we're thinking to ourselves about where we want to land with how much, and we'll circle back on that later.
So we'll have the figures we have available after our budget meeting then, probably?
Correct.
So we'll have more information to go on?
Yeah.
And thank you, Terry, for getting all the information ahead of time. Appreciate it.
That's on your
Just-
agenda, so.
Just one more quick question, does that include, Terry, some kind of application or whatever we want to call it, so that or does it just say we should just do all of it to the towns and not worry about any kind of application?
No, and that will be up to you to determine if you want an application process to award that, or if you're just gonna do a lump sum to whoever wants it. I don't know.
And even if you do a lump sum, you may still want them to tell you how they're going to use it, because it could affect your decisions going forward on other issues they might bring up to you. So it might be a good idea, even if it's not a criteria, for the award, that they tell you how they're going to use it.
Okay, we good on that? Carissa or Allison, can you give us a quick update on the Board of Elections search for voting machines?
I can tell you that they have a voting machine that's been certified by the state that they wish to purchase. Purchase is roughly $500,000, a little bit more than that. And it's going to be off of state bid, and they've submitted the paperwork on the state bid contract to Allison to review. I think Terry and I are still waiting for some info to look at that so we can make a determination, again, if we can use the ARPA funds. That's what we're hoping to use. And when we get all that together, we'll be able to go forward, and you'll have some resolutions in front of you.
Okay. And we all got the invitation from Mr. Reynolds to attend their next demonstration down at the Board of Elections. I don't have that date in front of me, but yes, Ms. Burdick?
Do the old machines have any value? Can we sell them to anybody or trade them in, or do they just get scrapped?
I do know that we purchase many of them secondhand from other counties. I don't know, but I'm guessing probably they don't have much value because they won't maintain them anymore after 1 or 2 years from now.
My guess is, they're a fixed asset. They would go through our disposition of fixed assets policies and be turned over to DPW, and they would determine if there's any value for them. And if there is, they'd probably put them up on their auction. And if not, we would dispose of them otherwise.
Okay. Updates on a couple of the ARPA projects already allocated. Pictometry, Kier sent an update to Carissa yesterday, I think. They attempted to get the flyover done. They didn't get all of the county done. They got like 60% of it done, and of that 60%, not all of it passed the company's muster, so they're going to refly some of that. So now I think we're looking at probably the springtime before we'll have the flyover completed entirely. But Carissa, you are aware of some other pictometry through the state that we might want to consider?
There is another program going on right now. The state is actually doing a separate flyover, and they put it out an offer to all the counties throughout the holiday season. They sent some mailings saying if you would like to piggyback on their contract, you could get some enhanced images. I sent the offer to Russ Hall, who's doing the enumeration and is very familiar with 911 as well, and to Keir Durham. They both thought this would be a good way to augment our pictometry. This would add a lot, in particular to the public safety end of things. And the quote on that was $68,100. I don't know a whole lot about imagery. I know enough that the pictometry was good. I sent this to the people I thought would have the most input. They both agreed that this would be a good add-on. If the board's interested, I could put a MOE together for the next Ways and Means meeting, get this out. It has to be back to the state mid-February, so it is kind of, we have to make a decision one way or the other, I guess.
Well, why don't, yeah, Jim?
Wasn't that just like a duplication of, they're doing the same thing, right?
No.
Go ahead.
It's a different level of imagery. If you remember, we did not choose the most expensive version of pictometry. We kind of went with the mid-level. And this, I believe, had a different quality of images. And I think, if I remember right, they could be hosted off-site, so you could download them all as well and have them available to you.
Okay, thank you.
Both our guys said it would augment our project and wouldn't duplicate it.
Why don't you go ahead and do an MOE, and we'll get it on an agenda, and then we can have Russ or Kier, whoever, give us a better explanation, and we can just decide then. But it sounds like we got to get the ball rolling if we are going to do it. Okay. The law enforcement records management, that's been allocated, the contract signed, and
Correct. The contracts were all signed, and the sheriff's office should be working with Tyler Technology to get that rolling anytime after the beginning of the year.
and the digital control system for the county office building. Any update on that?
I believe we've signed all those contracts as well, and you passed those resolutions at the end of the year or beginning of this year, and should be working on those too.
Okay.
They're all brand new signed contracts, so I don't believe anything's been implemented yet.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else ARPA related before we move on to the next agenda item? Mr. Healy?
Thank you. Just going back to the pictometry, I think it's an excellent idea to move ahead, and we can cross that bridge when we get all our paperwork in order. But I just wondered if anybody ever checked with the federal government to see what they're doing, because I know from my previous career, I quite often utilized the federal government services along that line when I was doing applications for search warrants and so on.
I don't know. To be honest with you, that's not anything I've looked into, and if public safety has, we probably haven't talked about it, but I can check and ask.
Mr. Ricky?
Also on the pictometry, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like when we agreed to this before, they said this is just what we need. I don't remember them. You know, it's more like, hey, we don't need the Cadillac, we got the Chevy, and that's good enough. Now, before the thing's even rusty, we're looking to spend more on it. But did I miss something?
Not exactly. I think you're right that we said that this mid-level arrangement with pictometry was good. Adding this on through the state, I believe, is a much cheaper cost than what we were quoted by pictometry. Pictometry is a separate company owned by Eagle View. So to get the level I think that the state was offering, it might have been cost prohibitive for us, and maybe this is a better deal from the state than Pictometry/Eagle View offered. But probably the best thing is to have Kier or Russ come in and explain it, because I don't know the details myself between the two. I look at it and I trust them to explain it to me. It's not something, it's so technical, I don't quite get it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rumfeld?
So to answer part of your question there on my law enforcement background, if you have the advanced, what the state police do, you can actually, like we had a manhunt in Andover, the third day of this year. I mean, ever since Walt got undersheriff, we've had like 3 or 4 standoffs. I blame it on him. But if we had an updated, the federal pictometry we have is so old that it's not even worth using. And the state one we have is kind of old. And we got the state one, like what she's saying, like the Cadillac. The good one's good for DPW, for your general stuff. But if you're doing a manhunt and you want to get right there, real time, what's in that area, that is probably the best one to use. It's more of a public safety thing, I think, than it is standard. Yeah, you got real time.
And I know on the state letter, the state has not updated theirs since 2020, but it doesn't look like they've had the whole statewide system updated since 2001. So they may have flown part of Allegheny County in 2020, but maybe not the whole county since 2001. So there should be significantly different images than what are available currently through the state.
And that's too another way we help our town and villages, because it's all useful for them for grant applications. Is that correct?
Yes, I think pictometry and that law enforcement's record management, both of those purchases through ARPA money are systems that can be shared with your municipalities.
All right, anything else on ARPA's? Gretchen?
I was just wondering, Chris says that's probably something that would be important to put a press release out or put something out about, these new services and things that we're adding with ARPA money to, because people just don't know what they don't know on that, so. But.
Making a note of that, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else ARPA related? We're going to talk ARPA again in budget, so if we forgot anything, Jan will pick us up. Okay, let's move to number 2, community service recognition. This is another one of our new projects for the year. I think the employee recognition went over really well at the last board meeting. We're going to do something similar at the upcoming board meeting, which is to recognize people in the community who have gone above and beyond. So we're going to draft a resolution. It'll be sponsored by each member individually, just like we did with the employee recognition. The first question I have for you guys is that okay with you? The reason we do that is so we don't let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, and have a recognition of this type have to run through the committee process. Committee of the whole can't sponsor resolutions, so it has to be individual names. If that's okay with you guys, I'll just continue to do it that way. And if by some chance, one of these days, say your cousin who you hate is getting a recognition and you don't want to be a sponsor, just let me know in advance and we'll make sure that your name isn't listed on the resolution. But if there's no objection, I'll just make an assumption that you're all willing to sponsor. Is that good?
Question.
Mr. Healy, then Mr. Sear.
How about the veterans recognition? Seems like that kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. Are we going to pick that back up, or?
I had a sit down with Mike Hennessy last week, renewed to him or expressed our interest in continuing that. It's not as simple, believe it or not, as it looks to drum up veterans. A lot of veterans aren't interested in being recognized. He has affirmed that he's going to continue to look. He's going to work with Allegiance and the VFWs and continue to get us candidates when he can. It's not going to be a monthly thing, though.
It's going to be continued.
It's definitely going to be continued.
Well, perhaps you have a family member who want to lead the way.
I don't. On the community service recognition, Jan and Phil and I got together to get the ball rolling in District 5. I think it would be nice to go district by district so we spread over the county. What I'd really love is to empower you guys to find nominees from your districts. Deb and Dwight and Adam, I'm coming back to you, have a nominee, an excellent nominee, but the person can't be available in February, so they're going to do theirs in March. That's District 3. I reached out to District 4 to see if you guys could come up with something. How do you want to do it? You want to build a little calendar out the rest of the year so everybody knows which districts have which month? Are you guys willing to do that? If you find the candidates, and the hard work is getting their bona fides, getting their bios and getting, okay, what have you done and how many years and what awards and what church, and I mean, there's some work involved gathering that information, but if you guys are willing to get it that far, then Brenda and I can draft the resolutions and we'll be good to go. Is anyone not willing to do that? Community members, yep. Everybody's willing to give it a shot? I mean, worst case scenario, if you have a good candidate and you don't have the time to do that legwork stuff, let me know and I can do it. But it would be nice to keep it rolling. So, District 4, you want to take February? Okay, all right, so let's talk about that later. Do you have something, Chris?
I feel silly for asking questions. This is a great program. I love it. Are you doing just individuals, or can you nominate like an organization or a group of individuals?
I think you would nominate whoever you wanted.
Perfect.
In fact,
I love it.
January is a husband-wife team. So, I think we can give ourselves the flexibility, Adam, did you have something?
No, Mr. Harris, you answered my question.
Okay.
I was wondering if we were doing one individual per district or three, and I think it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so let's give it, yes, Mr. Rumpfelt.
So, sorry. So if we can't get a veteran, could we reach out to like law enforcement officer to do the pledge and honor them, or fire chief, or, just somebody to honor the first
I don't
responders
see
there
why
in the
not.
thick and thin? Being a veteran, I know how hard it is to get veterans because I turned it down 5 times in the last,
You're one
I
of
don't
those.
feel like I deserved it, but, we could honor, if we can't get a veteran, maybe reach out to some law enforcement and then maybe some fire chiefs or.
Well, that would
ambulance
fit the community service.
Yeah,
You could,
so,
correct.
and we have somebody in mind, I'm gonna call and ask them and get the bio if it's okay for
Okay,
February.
yeah.
Okay, it's
One
February
of the
22nd. right?
prerequisites is they have to be able to come to the meeting.
February
Or
22nd.
else it's not worth doing. February 22nd.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the law enforcement thing too. That's something. Okay, so we're good on that. I'll get a calendar out, and we'll share the well. All right, item 3, employee recognition form. That, we already went through the first one. That was, the first recipient was, again, just to get the ball rolling, I approached Human Resources and asked them to come up with a candidate to get it going. And they picked I think a great candidate. He was well received by his supervisor and by the department head and his fellow employees. It was nice. Now that we're going, it's been advised that we formalize the nomination process a little bit. And so Mallory went ahead and drafted what's attached to this agenda, which is the nomination form. And that's going to be distributed to department heads with a little guidance from HR and the county administrator's office. And we're going to have people fill these out. For now, I think it's still just going to be a chairman's pick. For the long term, if we want to change that, we could run it through personnel. Or we could build a little mini subcommittee that just handles these nominations. I have no idea how many nominations we're going to get, if we're going to get 0 or if we're going to get 100. So we're just kind of learning on the fly here. But I think it was important to probably get the nomination form out there so people understand the reason, really, for the recognition. Like, what traits do all of our employees embody that we want to recognize as exemplary? So anyway, that's just in for your information. Anyone have any comments or questions on that? Okay. Chambers improvements. So when I got sworn in on the 3rd, my first action was to request a table or a mini desk for myself. So I didn't have to do what former chairmans had to do, which is like look around the room and say, oh, Deb Root isn't here today. I guess I'll sit at her desk, or maybe I'll sit at Fred's desk. And so that is the first of our chambers improvements. The second that I'm hoping for is to improve our podium game. I think it's a little bit silly to be lifting up the podium and carrying it to the middle when we need it and putting it back. And it's not a good podium because the microphone takes up the entire podium. It's on an angle, and you can't put a piece of paper down and have the microphone at the same time. Department heads don't like the podium in the back either for the same reason. It's hard to put paperwork in there. You can slide it underneath, but then you can't read it. I personally don't find it aesthetically pleasing, a little robotic. But so those are kind of the two easy ones. What I didn't expect was that it would open Pandora's box a little bit with some other improvements. DPW's been looking at this room. They've determined that that wall with the pillar right behind that podium is not a load-bearing wall. It's been kind of a problem for the people in the back for a long time, visually and in terms of being able to hear. There's been talk about this conference room over here being underutilized and the potential for breaking out this wall and maybe sliding AV equipment in there. There's lots of concepts. So where we are now is Carissa and Tom and Dean from DPW and Keith representing IT are going to get together in the next couple of weeks and have a more serious conversation about what inexpensive but effective improvements could be made to the chambers. Does anyone have any early on questions or comments about that? I mean,
Can we use ARPA money for that?
Yes. Mr. Stockin?
They're still working on changing this thing, right?
You mean changing the,
Yeah.
what I was told by DPW is that is a major 6-figure renovation project that could not be done in-house. Doesn't mean we can't do it, but it's that would be a lot bigger lift than the changes that DPW is talking about now. But everything's up for discussion.
I think the other thing in talking to Tom, when we look at this, I want them to look at the electric supply and more outlets. You all have laptops. I can see when you're trying to charge midday, you're reaching for outlets that aren't close by and kind of competing for them sometimes. And looking at that is another thing I added to Tom's list. So I know we already fixed the dais last year during COVID and added some outlets up there, but there's really nothing for the rest of the room. So.
I agree, that would be a nice addition.
Outlets, yeah. So just kind of wait and see what they come back with. I will, Mr. Stockton, I'll have them add that to their list of discussion topics.
Well, back a while ago, I talked with Tom about all that. We were looking at it, and I didn't have a response then that was that significant.
That it was that expensive?
Yeah.
Well, I talked to Dean, so maybe those two should talk to each other and get on the same page. I don't think it's a matter of picking it up and turning it.
They both told me it was expensive, not anything they could do in-house, and it would require some major purchases.
Yeah, we have to remember, too, that we have to work in this room, so anything that would really disrupt, the governance of this county for a long period of time needs to be taken into consideration, too. What's that? We'd spend a lot less money. All right. Anything else on the chambers stuff? All right. Item 5, February calendar. I've just got a couple notes here. Has everyone submitted to Brenda their known absences in at least the coming month? So we know what we're up against. We got guys in India. We got people all over the place. I'm hoping that the way the committees were structured with 7, that it would be a very rare occasion that we ever don't have a quorum for a committee. All we need is 4. So we can have 3 absences and still conduct business. So hopefully that works. Yeah. The third Wednesday committee of the whole meeting. I don't know if I've told you guys this already, but what we're going to do this year is just make that a standing cow. It's going to occur every single month. There's not going to be a discussion, are we having a cow, are we not having a cow? There will always be a cow, because I guarantee we can always find someone to talk about. What I'm going to try to avoid is springing anything on the A team that they're not prepared for. If we have an agenda item that we want to talk about and they have no new information, we're not going to force them to give us old information or force them to come up with, ways to fill the time. We can fill our own time. That being said, we need to establish some kind of deadline if any of you guys have items you want added to that cow's agenda. So off the top of my head, I'm just thinking if we have to pre-file for a board meeting on the Wednesday previous, why don't we just say, if you have anything you want to talk about in the cow that you want on the agenda, we can always talk about stuff in the good of the order, but if you ever want something on the agenda, try to get it to Brenda by the previous Wednesday, so she's got a week with it. Does that sound good? Okay, we're ready to go for, Mr. Barnes.
Yes, I have a question. The A team, that seems to be a new thing floating around. At least I don't recall it from last year or before. Who is the A team? I have an idea, and beyond the A team, is there a B, C, D team?
I think we're the D team. Go ahead.
I can
Chris.
handle that. So the A team is just shorthand for administrative team. So this is a group of individuals that represent the departments that serve all the other departments. So you have your clerk of the board, your treasurer, county attorney, myself, HR, IT. At times, Public Works has also been on here. And these are, if any of the other departments want to try to get something done, these are the departments that support them. So if anybody needs something changed with their budget, a contract reviewed, something to come through administration, MOE, we're the ones that help them get those things done. Whereas all the other departments focus on a single task. Like the county clerk, although he might help a department here or there, his task in life is really, recording of deeds, working with the courts. It's not to support all the other departments in a systematic way. So we call that an administrative team. It's been around since Mitch Alger was here, so at least 4 administrators ago. And sometimes they meet monthly, sometimes this past year, I think we only had maybe 1 or 2 meetings. But generally, this is the group of people that work together to get things done for other departments. There are other teams out there. We've had a development team as well, so maybe they're the D team that they existed with employment and training and planning, had worked with our economic development director / IDA, as well as our tourism contract for years to work on things. And I'm hoping that that development team also will continue to work as we fill some more vacancies out there. I could see other teams forming, but right now those are the only 2 that I know of.
Mr. Seer?
Mr. Barnes, I remember 13 months ago when I got elected, we had this exact same conversation. They explained what the A-team was. The A-team, the way it was explained, and I understand, get information from department heads when there's any issues that comes to us. That was just my recollection.
And I don't really like the term A-team, other than it's kind of a fun term to have internally. I don't want to make it seem like this group of department heads is any more important than other department heads, but the A does stand for administrative.
Yeah, and I mean, in addition to everything you just described, really, you are the team that the board leans on to implement board strategy. And
Yeah, so if you were looking at doing a new policy, or maybe you don't know you need a new policy, but we're aware of other requirements that you would need a policy for, we would get together and hash that out and say, all right, what do each of these departments know about that? How should the board be handling it? Do we have recommendations for the board? Do we have recommendations for other departments? Those are the sorts of things that we would talk about internally before it comes to you.
Mr. Healy?
Yes, the A-team's been around for a while, and we're lucky we have some very good talent on that team, and they do a fine job. But they're probably the biggest importance, and it was most critically was during the COVID shutdown, and probably things wouldn't have operated if we didn't have the A-team there to keep things going.
Good point.
In the A-team, like I said, we've used DPW off and on. We've used planning as well, and we bring in other departments and get the subject matter expertise they need for a particular issue. And so during COVID, we used a lot of other department heads, but didn't make them sit through all the other things that might not interest them according to their department.
Mr. Stockin?
Not about that back at calendar for just a minute. I'm looking way ahead. And we didn't go into March, but that last week of February and the first day of March is NISAC, I think, which means the first set of meetings in March would be on a Thursday, right, Brenda?
That's what we've done in the past, and we can certainly change those meetings to Thursday in March if you'd like. We'll put a notice out.
Doesn't make a difference to me, other than I wanted to be sure that there wouldn't be a cow on that Thursday. If we go to Thursday.
There wouldn't be, unless one was requested by the administrative team, there wouldn't be, because it would be the last week of the month.
It's the first of the next month.
You're right, the second.
Yeah, it's the first meeting in March.
Yeah, that would still be the case.
Yeah.
Okay, again, on the calendar, so this upcoming Wednesday, the 25th, Allison is prepared to lead the first of our educational training type cows, and she's going to fix us on the rules of order within the chambers. We're looking forward to that. For February, it'll be fun. She said she's going to make it fun, game show style or something. We'll see. Let's see, candy, prizes, and stuff like that. For February, I spoke with Sheriff Cicerello yesterday, and on the 21st or 2nd, it was the Tuesday.
21st?
15th is a cow. The following Tuesday, because Monday's President's Day, he has offered to open up the public safety building and give the legislature a tour of the jail and the public safety facilities, which I think will be good, because I remember when I first got on the board 5 years ago, we did a tour down there. It was very helpful in understanding all the operations down there, and I don't think we've done it since then. So, yeah, it's going to be at 10 a.m., and he said he didn't think it would take much more than an hour to tour the whole facility, but I think that'll be valuable. He's looking forward to it. I hope the administrative team can join us. But, you know, keep in the back of your minds, there's things we've talked about fairly casually over the years about ways to utilize that building in addition to its traditional uses, including potential for Meals on Wheels coming out of the jail kitchen. There's even been talk about utilizing pods, unused pods for other purposes like mental health or even Code Blue, or, you know, there are things to talk about down there. So I think that'd be good. Any questions? Yeah, Mr. Saka.
I read a very interesting article about another county jail that they were raising chickens and getting eggs, and at the price of eggs, $5 a dozen. We ought to forget the pheasants, and raise chickens.
Yeah. Yeah. So that'll be good. Again, trying to, I say empower, but really just limit the amount of work I have to do. I think maybe as we go with these trainings, if we could get committee chairs to dialogue with the department heads that report to their committees and try to come up with ideas for future months. I can think, like, just off the top of my head, I have no understanding whatsoever about the operations of real property. I just don't. So I think it would be great to get real property in here to you know, help me out on that. So put your thinking caps on as far as that goes, and maybe we can tap different committee chairs in different months to come up with something to help us learn to do our jobs better. Mr. Sear.
Mr. Harris, I think that's a wonderful idea you had. I actually appreciate it. I think each legislator should really take at least 3 committees they're on and get extremely knowledgeable and passionate on how to better serve. It's just not a committee chair. It's the entire committee that makes a decision that should be knowledgeable and informed. And I hope to see you bring more of that in the future. Thank you.
Great. Okay, any questions on that? Mr. Rumfeld.
Could you get us the list of the people that, I mean, like, I know Board of Elections falls under personnel, and I know human resources, but other than that, I don't really.
Best spot to find that information is within the board rules.
Okay.
It details each committee and which departments report to that committee. Do we all have a copy of the board rules? I can never find it when I'm looking for it someplace. Yeah, maybe I'll resend the board rules.
Mr. Chairman, I have just a comment on the tour of the jail or any other tours you do. It's not a public meeting, so you won't be doing any discussion related to it. You'll just be taking in information and taking a tour, and then you'll have any public debate about it later at a meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so we're good on the February calendar. Okay, we did pretty well. I've got a couple things that I had in the good order. We can knock those out now, and that way we'll get ourselves right up to 11 o'clock for Peter. I'm going to do my best to hit up as many town or village meetings as I can over the course of the next year, just to say hi, fly the county flag, so to speak, and do some listening. I had sent an email to the District 2 legislators letting them know that I'm going to try to get to the Town of Ward meeting on, what was it, Mike, the 7th? 9th? And they've decided that they're going to try to coincide their district meeting for the same time, which is great. We'll all be there, and that'll work. But in the future, as we go through the year, if I'm ever going to be visiting a town or a village board within your districts, I'll give you a heads up. And then if you guys want to coincide your district meeting with that, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I think it would be too hard for us to all try to get on the same page with that kind of thing, but I'll always give you the heads up. Mr. Healy?
Well, I appreciate that, and I just want to mention that I was down at the Village of Belmont Board meeting the other night, and they received your correspondence requesting to come to one of their meetings, and it was very well received and appreciated. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I did reach out to all the supervisors and mayors. Also reached out to all the school superintendents, just kind of introducing myself and reminding, some of these people that we're here and we're here to help them in any way we can and so forth. So, okay. I have here a sheet. Phil, can you grab this? If we can pass this around to just update, make sure I have all of your correct cell phone numbers, so we can just write your name and cell phone number. I'll build a group, so we have everybody has each other's number, and if, like the instance that came up a couple weeks ago, if we ever need to get in touch with each other quickly, we've got good numbers. Okay, Mr. Degnan is going to be here in 10 minutes. Do you guys want to take a break? Take 5? Yeah? All right, we'll suspend the meeting for 5 minutes and meet back here at 5 up.